not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history, what body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psychology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
This is Friday Java from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network on the 23rd of March 2018. We have a big march coming up tomorrow, and we'll get to it firstly, and then we'll go to the people at the University of Virginia. That is Larry Sabato's shop, and we'll look at some of the political machinations surrounding the midterm election coming up. But before we do that, some other news here, we'll dispose of it. DJ Trump is back at it again. H.R. McMaster is out. The flamethrower and ultra-right conservative John Bolton is in. Bolton's claim to fame is he's the man that convinced G.W. Bush to invade Iraq based on weapons of mass destruction that never existed. Now, what does this mean for foreign policy? Well, basically speaking, it destabilizes an already destabilized foreign policy shop. In the time that the U.S. has now decided to move forward on the Korean peninsula, as Lenin once said, 2 steps forward. In this case, it's 1 step forward and 2 steps backward, perhaps 3 steps backward. We'll see how this turns out and how much more destabilization will occur, particularly in places like Syria and also in Iran. Those are variables out there that the U.S. can do very little about, other than start a Mideast-wide war. Now, that could occur, yes, but that's further destabilizing the geopolitical situation, world situation, and at the same time, the global economic situation. We have to get the terror program of DJ Trump, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminium or aluminum. And now the penalties are, $60 billion of punitive tariffs towards China. Now, the problem here is the global setup the way it is now. This further destabilizes it because China has already talked about what it will do as countermeasures. Now, it doesn't really stop with China. He's talked also about various EU countries, including the Republic of Korea, and that is Samsung. So we're seeing those machinations just taking place. Now, it takes about 15 days for these to come into effect, and the extent of the damage will be known in the summer months, depending obviously upon where contracts are now, etc., and when they will start enforcing. In other words, I should say supplies, not contracts. For instance, supplies of various Chinese products that are already in the country. We're not subject to this, and how much backlog there is, the supply chain will depend on that. But on the flip side, in various states, particularly agricultural states, there will be counter moves that will affect those states. In other words, it won't be even in what is going on. It's sort of like the steel tariff there will help some of the old line steel mills get back online. But the more modern steel mills, the smaller, say 500 worker steel mills, that deal with rolled steel that they get in from various countries and then they fabricate it in the U.S., their prices will go up, which will affect where they are. So it really would depend on which state you're in and which locality there and what the job situation is. And at the same time, it gets very, very complicated. You have this destabilization in a global trade, which now is only a whisper, in other words, but it will really depend. It could get into a situation, as Dr. Greenspan talked about, irrational exuberance, the psychology of the market. So we're seeing some of that, the 700-point drop in the market on Thursday. But now we'll see what happens on Friday, and the week will close out across various world markets. We'll have that information, incidentally, on a Numbers Man. That's our show, what we do, macroeconomic show, that we do this weekend. We're sort of abbreviating some things because we are traveling. And of course, we also have March Madness. Sister Jane rolls on. I don't know why I call her Sister Jane. Rolls on with Loyola of Chicago. But at the same time, we have the midterm elections that are setting up. Now we're going through March. We're marching through March and heading into April and then to May and to June, where that was 6 months a point. Long ways to go. The generic ballot polling now, don't pay that much attention to it. On the week that was, we'll go over those. We'll have a Pew a survey also. Hopefully we'll get that done. A lot of things going on all at the same time. And of course, in March, we'll get to in just a second here. We'll get to a lot of things in a second. But anyway, we'll get to the big march in Washington. These are high schoolers that are coming from all across the U.S. to Washington, and there will be also local rallies there against the NRA. Now, this is part of this right-wing base that Bolton plays to. DJ Trump's also forced out his attorney, Dowell, or whatever his name was, out, and he's brought in a flame fraud degenerate. I think it's the guy's name. But that doesn't really matter that much. This thing is heating up. We have McDougal, who was a playmate, saying that DJ Trump on CNN loved her. Now, does this really matter? Well, it's sort of in this little soup here. I don't want to call it a gumbo, but a little soup here that is all swirling around DJ Trump literally at once. Now, most administrations manage to have just a McDougal. They don't have a trade war going on, perhaps a hot war coming, and at the same time, the fight against the NRA, one of their major supporters, and a midterm election coming up. Granted, it is out. We're just in the third month. Excuse me. And the election is a long time away. Many things can happen. At the same time, the Congress has passed a budget. It's on the way to DJ Trump. Very interesting budget. We'll get that summary from the Washington Post there. And we'll come back on Saturday and stabilize some of these issues, have longer to talk about them. We're not trying to get, obviously, into a 10-minute forecast here. We will not do that. But we will spend more time on it. And we'll take care of this March. I'm not sure. We'll probably have a special programming. Luckily, we have enough channels now that we don't have to be on every channel on every day. So that is some of our plan here. We will get to Facebook. Now, that is in the tech sector. That has destabilized the tech sector and took Google and some of these people with them that are literally sucking the blood out of the consumer. And this Facebook thing, in spite of what Zuckerberg said or didn't say, he'll be going to Congress, will be bigger than this so-called Russian election interference. That also goes through the house of Facebook. So we're seeing all these things swirling around Facebook and how Facebook was conducting the business and how the API was opened up. Now we have machinations with for the Cambridge Analytica, not only the Facebook part, but other parts of skullduggery. So in other words, we'll have a special program on Cambridge Analytica. These are some things that have to be treated in a more isolated situation, if we can have one. We also have E.J. Dionne's article from a book written in 1964. I believe we're talking about the same thing here. Anyway, nonetheless, we've got 3 or 4 things going on here that I was talking to H about that needs to be expanded upon. So we have really many things in the air. Let me get to the march tomorrow, and we'll try to get some things out here. This is the statement of March for Our Lives, the high schoolers. No one more. We cannot allow one more child to be shot at schools. We cannot allow one more teacher to have to make a choice to jump in front of a firing assault rifle to save the lives of students. We cannot allow one more family to wait for a call or a text that never comes. Our schools are unsafe. Our children and teachers are dying. We must make it our top priority to save their lives. The March for Our Lives is created by, inspired by, and led by students across the country who will no longer risk their lives waiting for someone else to take action to stop the epidemic of mass school shootings that have become all too familiar. In a tragic wake of 17 lives brutally cut down in Florida, politicians are telling us that now is not the time to talk about guns. The March for Life believes the time is now. On the 24th of March, the kids and the families of March for Life will take to the streets of Washington, D.C. to demand that their lives and safety become a priority. The collective voice of the March for Lives movement will be heard. School safety is not a political issue. There cannot be two sides to doing something in our power to ensure the lives and future of children who are at risk of dying when they should be learning, playing, and growing. The mission focus of the March for Our Lives is to demand that a comprehensive and effective bill be immediately brought before the Congress to address these gun issues. No special interest group, no political agenda is more critical than the timely passage of legislation to effectively address the gun violence issues that are rampant in our country. Every kid in this country now goes to school wondering if this day might be their last. We live in fear. It doesn't have to be this way. Change is coming, and it now starts, inspired by and led by kids who are our hope for the future. These young voices will be heard, and will also be heard, many of them, in November of this year. Stand with us on the 24th of March. Refuse to allow one more needless death. The March for Our Lives. Now, this makes it explicit what they are talking about. It has already been written, at least in the Washington Post, that this budget action would be the last major action of Congress. Now it's up to these children and their parents to make this statement in Washington loud and clear. DJ Trump will hear it. I don't even mean probably be on the golf course in Florida, but nonetheless he'll hear about it, even on Fox News. And so will the politicians. They're there today, many of them. They're talking to progressive politicians. They are touring sites from every molehill, village, hamlet, city, and state across the U.S. So we commend them, and we'll put this up on our showmass to make certain that this does in fact occur. On we go to the people at the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. That is the home of one Dr. Larry Sabato. And the Crystal Ball. Now, this is by Godfrey Skelly. Anyway, exit stage left or right, midterm elections, retirements, and open seats in the House from 1974 to 2018. Republicans already have many abandoned districts to defend this November. Are there more to come? There will be more to come because of the various political machinations of DJ Trump. In many of these districts, when it becomes apparent that there are going to be job losses, that will affect on the ground, particularly in the Rust Belt, and that will depend on district to district. Some districts will gain a few jobs, some districts will lose more jobs. By multiple measures such as retirements, peer retirements, open seats that must be defended in this cycle, the GOP has one of the largest levels of exposure in a U.S. House, in the U.S. House of any presidential party dating back to 1974. Republicans already have more retirements than any presidential party at midterm cycle from 74 to 2018. They are not far behind the Democrats in 1978 in terms of open seats. They hope, because these seats are lacking an incumbent, are more difficult for an incumbent party to maintain, the situation should deeply worry the GOP. Now, 1978 was a different year. Jimmy Carter was president, and we had hyperinflation at that time. We had the oil embargo, and various other things were happening on the economic front. And one must remember that in 1978, the economy of the U.S. was much smaller than today. It was not a global economy. It was waiting on Ronald Wilson Reagan to ride out of Hollywood on his white horse. Early filing deadlines relative to past cycles mean that fewer GOP House members still have to decide if they are running for re-election relative to past presidential parties' House conferences, while additional retirements are surprised that open seats might occur after the filing deadlines have expired. The range of possibilities of possible retirements might run from a handful to the double digits. Incidentally, we remember in this broadcast, Louise Slaughter from Rochester. She had been a stalwart. She died this week. She was 88 years old, the oldest actual member of the House. I believe the oldest one prior to her was our own John Connors of Tennessee. Midterm retirements and open seats in the House of Representatives here in the aftermath of Connor Lamb's special election victory on the 13th of March. A constant refrain has the stated fear amongst Republicans that the result would precipitate more retirements among Republican members in Congress. The crystal ball has noted in the past, open seats held by the presidential party in midterm elections have typically seen large average swings towards the opposition, making retirements a serious concern for the party in the White House because of the strength of incumbency. And we've talked about incumbency. It's been talked about in various articles in the broader political science. And especially after Citizens United, incumbency means a lot. The Koch brothers are busy. Because of the strength of incumbency, political parties have a more difficult time retaining a seat if it controls when the incumbent does not seek re-election. That is, seat maintenance, interesting term, becomes harder for the incumbent party, in part because it now has to defend an exposed seat. Looking ahead to November, the number of additional Republican retirements could be a critical factor in determining whether the Republican or the GOP maintains its majority in the House. As a result, we wondered the following: how bad is the GOP retirement picture? This article seems to explore these questions using data from 1974 to 2008. There are two aspects to consider when trying to account for House members and of their choice to leave Congress, the lower chamber. From an electoral standpoint, the most important measurement is the number of open seats in November, which will have no incumbent defending them. For our purposes, the next most vital figure is the number of open seats held by the president's party. There can be more confusion in counting such seats. However, for example, sometimes members have announced their retirement only to resign or die prior to the regular November election. That does happen. However, in other cases, that seat remains vacant until November, maintaining its status as an open seat. Additionally, an open seat could occur when an incumbent loses a primary. That does happen. They're just looking at retirement, so every open seat there. It's sort of like up in Buffalo with Ms. Slaughter. That seat will be, however, safe up there. Another consideration is the nature of what retirement means. Some House members really do ride off into the sunset, uninterested in seeking election to another office. However, others are retiring to run for another elective office. That happens more that people decide to run for the Senate or for governor. In some states, running actually for governor is more important than being in the Senate. Otherwise, overall retirements will generally refer to sitting House members who decide to exit the House, whether to run for an office or not. The timing of retirements and open seats, another subtitle here. A good starting point for judging how the 2018 cycle compares to past midterm cycles and getting some idea of how more members will retire particularly Republicans, as the president's party is examined when retirements occur in the election calendar. The data shows that 2018 is already set to be in the cycle with one of the highest. And we talked about that. A number of House members who retired starting 600 days before election is up to 75 days. Dates are based on official retirement announcements. In terms of retirements, Pure are running for another office in 2018 is a record setter, dating back again to 2074. 52 members from both parties have opted against re-election bids. Surprisingly, the previous midterm record was 49 in 1978. March 21st marks the 230th day prior to election in 2018. In the 2018 cycle, 52 retirements thus far dwarfed the 42 that occurred in 1978. Now we have to mention here, in 1978, the U.S. had a different political graphic than today. We started the 70s, we were ending the 70s, but at the same time, the percentage of people of color had come out of the official apartheid. When we say we're talking about the American political landscape. And the civil rights era, marches were still in the streets at that particular time. And, of course, we had America held hostage. Looking at open seats in a 2018 cycle. Let me get along here. The President's Party's retirements and open seats. Having looked at the timing and total number of retirements and open seats, we turn to figures for the Presidential Party in midterm environment. So how does retirements and open seats in 2018 for the Republicans compare to the presidential parties in the past? Now, members of the Presidential Party in the midterm of 1974, that was Gerald R. Ford. Watergate was there. 52 retirements in 2018 so far. 36 retirements have been Republicans. This is the highest figure there, topping the 32 retirements the Democrats had in 78. And if we look at some of these retirements in the 1974 from the President's Party, that was 21 and there, and had 24 open seats. We'll skip down to 78, 31 retirements in the President's Party. That would have been Gerald R. Ford, and 18 of the party, and 63% of the share was there. And again, this is to 1982. That would have been under Reagan. His party had 21 to retire, 19 Democrats. In 1990, 17 retired and 10 from the Democratic Party. And we had, 18 open seats. If we go down to 2002, that was G.W. Bush. His aspect there. Anyway, 22, and 2006, 18. 10 Democrats, 14 there. But this year, under D.J. Trump, 36 so far retired and 16 Democrats. The share of the President's Party, 67%. So the average is 22.3 for the Presidential Party, 17.7 from the other party. And we will append this on here. Go further into retirements before the deadline. Pure retirements, well, we have 22 of those from the Presidential Party. And a lot of this is age of people also. 8 from the Democratic Party, a total of 30. Now, this is in the House. And we'll get down. I guess we'll look at some of the states here, filing deadlines in various states. I won't get into too much of that because we'll be back. But anyway, the conclusion here, by multiple reasons, such retirements, pure retirements, open seats, must be defended. The cycle has one of the highest levels of exposure in U.S. House history for the presidential party. It is larger, and it will be getting larger because a lot of it is policy decisions. A lot of this will come because of the budget. The Republicans have moved from what they used to call the party of fiscal restraint to the party of let's do it. So from the Washington Post here, we'll get to China. We'll close this one out. China threatens to raise tariffs on about $3 billion of U.S. imports. That is about 60% of what DJ Trump wants to raise tariffs on. But again, it depends on where that $3 billion falls. Period. A city that makes guns confronts its roles in Parkland. This is Smith and Weston was considering just a solid corporate citizen in his hometown until people learned it made the rifle used in the Marjorie Stoneman High School in Florida. And we'll look at this because of the march tomorrow. I know our time is running not in the direction we want it to run. McDougal here, emotional account of an affair with DJ Trump, apologizes to Melander. Melander, I suppose, is Trump's wife's name. Anyway, that is, of course, water under the bridge. The Chinese and their $3 billion in U.S. goods would hit tariffs there. Trump's announcement was a typical unilateralism and protectionism, no doubt about that. China does not have to fight a trade war, but is absolutely not afraid of a trade war. And it would be actually in the long term in China's best interests for this, because what happens in these trade wars, particularly with China, the Chinese economy is a growing and emerging economy. It will adjust. They perhaps at worst could lose a point in their GDP, but at the same time, they would reassert themselves and reshuffle the market deck, so to speak. He directed the trade representative within 15 days to increase the tariffs. China's products that benefit from U.S. technology will be made public. How the targeting will go there. But even as he confronts China over technology, this is incidentally from the Washington Post, Trump weakened a tariff meant to protect U.S. production of European metals and partially exempting the EU, Brazil, and other countries. Now, there are holes all in DJ Trump's tariff program. By challenging China, he rejected the approach of Republican Democrats, gambling that China will bend before he does. Well, that will not happen, because in China's best interest, there's no reason for China to bend. What China has to do is find other markets and go to that internal market. Hours after the announcement, the Commerce Ministry in China gave the first indication of potential targets, saying it's compiled a list of 120 products with nearly 1 billion, including fresh fruits, wines, which would be imposed a 15% tariff on them. The department did not specify a deadline, saying that 25% on other goods, including pork and aluminium, now could be imposed. China is a nation that eats a lot of pork. Again, this goes into areas like Iowa, Missouri, that send a lot of pork abroad. So we have to start measuring how this affects Pacific areas, excuse me, of DJ Trump's. This will mean more than other kinds of things, period, as to the approach, particularly in those states that are both Farm Belt and Rust Belt. Thinking of parts of Illinois, the Dakotas on their grains, and Minnesota on its grains and its medical industry there. These things will cost jobs. And in those areas, it will cost more jobs than it will create, period. Now, the impact of the May strength further, this is from the trade representative here. Leifner, I suppose I pronounce his name, but products from the EU, Australia, Argentina, South Korea, and Brazil will not be affected when the tariffs go into effect on a Friday. Well, yeah. But they could be affected in other ways. This is kind of according to Trump, blames China for 60,000 factory jobs, loss of 60,000 factories. This is just farcical. And 9 million jobs, a number that most economists say blends the impact of employment and automation. It said unfair trade practices there, which had reached a record $375 billion. So again, this is something in the making that we won't get the impact of for several months here. Other administrations of G.W. Bush and Barack Obama sought to persuade the Chinese to embrace more full market-oriented product. Now, this is where it will benefit China in the sense that they will no doubt start to move away from some of these quote-unquote market initiatives because they are not paying off, period. This is Springfield, Mass. Here, Smith and Weston, and we'll do this on the week that was. We'll go now to ESPN so we can finish up here. The National Basketball on Thursday night, the Grizzlies were at the Hornets. Hornets 140-79. The 76ers at the Magic. 76ers 118-98. In overtime, the Pistons at the Rockets in Houston. Rockets 100-96. The Lakers were at the Pelicans, and it was Pelicans 128-125, high-scoring game. The Jazz and Mavericks in Dallas. Jazz pulled that one off, 119-112. And finally, the Hawks and Kings. Kings 105-90. On to Major League Baseball. Spring training, that is. The Yankees and Twins. Yankees 2-1. The Red Sox and Orioles. Orioles 10-7. The Marlins and Astros, it was all Marlins 15-7. The Tigers and Phillies, Tigers 6-2. Atlanta and the Cardinals, Cardinals are 8-2 in that contest. The Rays and Blue Jays, Rays 5-3. The Padres and Cleveland, Padres 7-6. The Royals and Brewers, the Brewers shut out the Royals. The Rockies and the Athletics, 4-2 Rockies. Toronto and the Pirates, Toronto 5-4. And the Nationals and the Mets, Mets 12-5, was all Mets in that contest. And we'll wait on our pointer here. the Reds and Rangers. You don't see the Reds and Rangers much because of American League, National League. Anyway, 7-6. And split squads, evidently, the Rangers and Mariners. Mariners 5-4 on that part of it. The White Sox and D-backs. Sox 3-1. The Angels and Dodgers. Dodgers 4-3. And the Cubbies and Giants. Giants win one over the Cubbies, 4-3. Cubbies had 12 hits, no errors, and the Giants, 12 hits and no errors. And Giants won, incidentally, on Wednesday night. The Cubbies had 6 hits and no errors, but only 3 runs. On to the NCAA tourney. We talked about it. Sister Jean rolls on. And as soon as we can get our pointer going here, and here we go. Texas A&M, number 3, Michigan. It was all Michigan, 99-72. Florida State defeated our favorite Gonzaga. Gonzaga was number 4. Florida State was number 9, 75 convincingly to 60. Was part of the contest. And Loyola of Chicago, 69 to 68. It doesn't get any better than that. Loyola number 11 and Nevada number 7. 1-point game. Kansas State and number 5 Kentucky. Kansas State 61 to 58. They move on. So we look at the bracket here, and I believe we'll see where this is all going. We have 4 more teams tonight, and we'll decide the 8, as one would say. Be interesting. Let me give the hockey scores, and I'll come back. I hope I'm giving the hockey scores. We are. The Lightning and Islanders. Lightning 7-6. The Rangers and Flyers. Flyers 4-3. The Coyotes and Hurricanes. Hurricanes 6-5. The Panthers and the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets shut out the Panthers 4-0. Blue Jackets of Columbus, Ohio. And nonetheless, the Oilers and the Senators. It was Oilers 6-2. The Capitals and the Red Wings. The Capitals shut them out 1-0. The Maple Leafs and the Predators 5-2. It's almost like a comic book outfit here. The Canucks and Blackhawks. I guess Judy watched this one. Anyway, 5-2 Canucks over the Blackhawks. And the Kings and Avalanche. Kings 7-1. The Maple Leafs and Predators. Maple Leafs 5-2, and the Golden Knights of Las Vegas in an overtime lost to the Sharks. Anyway, let's get back here, and here we go. This magical brackets here. Who we have now in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's see who we have up next here. Wait a minute here. We have Kansas State and Kentucky. Well, they moved on. Seems the bracket started moving people along here. We don't. Let's see, said the blind man to the bee. We've got the scores. We got the bracket. The Elite Eight. Well, that will actually be on the 20. Wait a minute here. 24th and 25th. The Sweet 16 and down to the Elite 8. And let's see if we can. We're trying to see who plays whom. Next here we have, well, whether or not Gonzaga rolls next season or not. This is from ESPN. I don't think we need to worry much about that. Trying now to get the schedule up here, and well, wonder about that. Nevada and a company here. Oops. We'll need to finish this up. And it's not giving me... oops. The schedule, who comes up next year. I had the schedule around here, and unfortunately, we did not prepare for the next 4. Actually, if, wait a minute, we'll have to change days here with their setup. Unfortunately, they're not helping. We'll go to tonight, and we obviously won't get the scores, but we will see, hopefully, who plays whom. All right. Now, here we go. Tonight, number 1, Kansas and Clemson here, and West Virginia and Villanova. Syracuse and Duke. I was talking to a guy on the train. He was going with Syracuse over Duke. Be interesting. The Texas Red Raiders and Purdue. 3-2 there. That's going to be a hard one to figure out there. I haven't seen either one of these teams play this year. Haven't seen the Orangemen play. Be interesting to see how Villanova turns out here. Somebody beating Crow here. But Villanova should beat West Virginia, we think. And Kansas, well, we'll take Kansas over Clemson. No doubt they're number 1. But fairly solid team. Don't know. Maybe Bob Knight's old team, the Texas Red Raiders. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, this will do it for us. We'll see you on the week that was. That'll be tomorrow night. We'll be talking about the week in more detail, perhaps, than we did this time around. And we'll have some more polling. We'll have polling. And, of course, the Monday morning quarterback on a Monday morning. And in between, we have Numbers Man, the economic program. We have some job losses to talk about, tariffs to talk about, quite a bit to talk about. Usually doesn't happen this way. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on the week that was. Good day.